The inexplicable nature of what he did is you can't understand it. Didn't when he pled guilty on November 6th. I never did during the course of any of this investigation, any of the interviews with him. I think that he shed a tear for himself. I think justice was served in the best way we can in Colorado right now. I think if somebody came up and put their hands around somebody's neck, the first thing a victim's going to do is grab onto the hands or the arms and try to pull them away, or scrape or claw or bite or whatever to try and get that person's hands off of their throat. There wasn't anything like that in Shanann. And his statement to investigators was, they were very clearly, obviously dead, so I decided to dispose of their bodies. He didn't call 911. He didn't try CPR. You didn't even check on them to see if they were breathing. When you hear that, you're thinking, this just doesn't.
On Tuesday, what did you think of his demeanor overall?
Yeah, it was very odd. He just was sitting there waiting for something to happen. The last time I talked to him, he said, I just want to cry. And I looked at him and said, why aren't you?
On Wednesday, everything changed.
A heartbreaking outcome to the story we have been tracking all week, the confession of a father.
I didn't know what to say or do. I don't know. I sat on our bed for I don't even know how long and didn't move because I didn't want to think that they weren't coming back.
Late Wednesday night, Watts is arrested. By Thursday, police were at the oil fields where Watts used to work, and within hours found 3 bodies. Court documents revealed they discovered Shanann's body in a shallow grave. The bodies of Bella and Celeste found submerged for days in oil tanks.
You have the right to counsel. You understand? Yes, sir.
In an interview with authorities, Watts filling in the blanks. According to an affidavit, he loaded all 3 bodies into the backseat of his work truck and took them to an oil work site.
7 years after the murders that shocked the world, Chris Watts's confessions still refuse to settle into a single, stable truth. What he said in 2018 is not what he repeated years later, and what he admitted in court is not what he later described behind prison walls. Time has not clarified his story. It has fractured it, and that fracture is where the darkest questions live. In the beginning, Watts presented himself as a man overwhelmed, claiming events spiraled out of control in a single moment. His early statements leaned heavily on shock and regret, carefully avoiding detail. Investigators noted how often he spoke in vague terms, how emotions appeared rehearsed rather than spontaneous. Even then, the groundwork for contradiction had already been laid. As years passed, Watts's confessions evolved. New versions emerged, each slightly reshaped, each revealing more while also raising new doubts. Psychologists and investigators observed a pattern. Disclosures seemed timed to moments when attention faded. Every confession felt less like accountability and more like control, an attempt to manage how the story would be remembered. 7 years later, the truth feels less like a destination and more like a maze. What did Chris Watts really feel? What was calculated and what was convenient? His words invite scrutiny, not because they explain the crime, but because they expose the limits of his honesty. This story isn't about reliving violence. It's about understanding deception, about how a confession can be used as a mask, not a mirror, and about why time does not always bring clarity, especially when the narrator benefits from confusion. As we begin this deep dive, remember that every statement matters, not just for what is said, but for what is avoided. If you value careful, fact-driven, true crime storytelling, please like this video, subscribe to Cold Truth Archives, True Crime, and share it. Your support helps keep the focus on truth, not spectacle. 7 years after the crime, investigators and analysts began to re-examine when Chris Watts chose to speak and when he stayed silent. Chapter 2 focuses not on what he confessed, but on the timing of those confessions. Each version arrived at a moment when attention was drifting, when the case risked becoming settled history rather than an active conversation. In the immediate aftermath, Watts's statements were brief and controlled. He spoke just enough to close the case legally, offering admissions that aligned with physical evidence, but avoided emotional depth. There was no effort to explain motive in full, only to end questioning. At the time, many believed this was remorse. Years later, that interpretation feels incomplete. As public interest surged through documentaries, books, and interviews, new details surfaced from Watts, often delivered indirectly through letters, prison interviews, or third parties. These additions reframed earlier claims without fully contradicting them, creating confusion rather than clarity. Experts noted that each new truth seemed designed to pull attention back to him, repositioning his voice at the center of the narrative. This pattern raises an uncomfortable question. Were these confessions acts of conscience or acts of control? By releasing information in fragments, Watts retained influence over how the story evolved. Even behind bars, he remained a participant, not just a subject. Criminologists point out that delayed confessions can serve psychological needs, relief, relevance, or even manipulation. In Watts's case, the shifting stories complicate efforts to understand motive. They force investigators and the public alike to revisit assumptions long thought settled. As you follow this chapter, consider how silence and speech can both deceive. Truth is not only about facts, but about intent, and intent is often revealed through timing. If this analysis helps you see the case from a deeper angle, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Cold Truth Archive's True Crime, and share it with others who care about understanding the full story.
Right now around your house.
Right now it's got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened? Your wife came home. Tell me what's.
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here, and like about 12:10 in that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say but she never got back to me. But she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well, and that's what really concerned a lot of people. Is like if she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. And then walked in the house, and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here. I mean, she wasn't here. The kids weren't here. Nobody was here.
What's your wife's name?
Shanann, Shanann.
What's your kids?
Bella and Celeste.
How do you spell Celeste?
Celeste.
How old are your daughters?
4. Bella's 4. Celeste is 3.
And so, how many times did you try calling her?
I called her 3 times, texted her about 3 times, just to say, what's going on. Like because after I called her and texted her once, it's like maybe she was just busy. Like she had just gotten back. Like everybody's probably calling her from her trip. She just got back from Arizona, and I figured she was just busy. But when her friend showed up, that's what it was like. It registered. Like, all right, this isn't right.
Do you think she just took off? Do you think?
I mean, right now I don't even want to just like throw anything out there. Like, I hope that she's somewhere safe right.
7 years later, every word still matters, and every pause speaks volumes. The focus shifts from timing to tone. When Chris Watts spoke about the murders over the years, what stood out most was not only what he said, but how he said it. His language changed as time passed, revealing subtle clues about responsibility, distance, and self-preservation. In his earliest statements, Watts relied heavily on passive phrasing. Events happened, situations got out of control, and moments led to outcomes. This style of speech quietly removed him from the center of his own actions. Investigators recognized this as a common deflection tactic, one that softens accountability while still appearing cooperative. Later confessions carried a different tone, more detailed, more reflective on the surface. Yet even then, emotional language remained oddly detached. When discussing Shanann and the children, his words lacked the natural cadence of grief. Instead, they sounded observational, almost clinical, as if he were describing scenes rather than people he loved. Analysts noted that empathy appeared performative rather than instinctive. Another striking shift was how Watts framed himself. In some versions, he portrayed himself as overwhelmed and trapped, subtly inviting sympathy. In others, he emphasized clarity and acceptance, suggesting growth and remorse. These shifts often aligned with outside attention, letters released when public interest spiked, interviews surfacing when silence grew uncomfortable. Language experts point out that genuine remorse tends to stabilize over time. The emotional core remains consistent, even as details sharpen. In Watts's case, the opposite occurred. His tone drifted, reshaped, recalibrated, raising questions about sincerity. Over the years, his words did not exist in isolation. They were shaped by interrogators, media narratives, psychologists, and even fellow inmates. Each interaction subtly reframed how he spoke about the crime and how much he chose to reveal. In the early stages, law enforcement guided the narrative. Questions were precise, timelines rigid, and contradictions immediately challenged. Under that structure, Watts's confessions stayed narrow and factual. He responded rather than reflected. Once that structure disappeared, his storytelling widened. Without direct pressure, his versions became more interpretive, less anchored to evidence. Prison introduced a different environment. Surrounded by men with their own stories and reputations, Watts began to explain himself differently. In letters and interviews, he sometimes echoed language common in criminal psychology, terms like disassociation or dark thoughts. Experts suggest this may not indicate growth, but adaptation. He learned how to speak about the crime in ways that sounded insightful without surrendering control. Media attention played its part as well. Each documentary or article revived interest, and with it came new statements attributed to Watts. These moments often coincided with slight narrative shifts, as though he were responding not to investigators, but to public perception. The story became something to manage rather than conclude. What's striking is that none of these influences produced a final, settled confession. Instead, they fragmented the truth further. Every new voice added another layer, another angle, another opportunity for reinterpretation. This chapter reminds us that confessions are not frozen in time. They are shaped by environment, audience, and consequence. And when the speaker benefits from ambiguity, clarity becomes the real casualty. If this chapter is helping you understand how manipulation can continue long after a crime, please like this video. Subscribe to Cold Truth Archives. True crime. And share it.
Stuff like this in bank robberies, and when I talk to a witness at a bank robbery, sometimes I find it best for them to just say, tell me what happened, get it all out, and then once you get it out, let's go over it, okay? So just get it all out as far as this. Tell me exactly what you remember, and I'll take notes about where we can go.
Okay. So this 1:48 a.m.
Let me switch chairs. Because when they come knocking, I got to use that key. Do you need more water?
No,
I brought you Gatorade.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Alright, so 1:48 a.m., doorbell detects a visitor. So when we were over at the neighbor's house, the next day we were looking at his camera as well, and it didn't show anybody walking up to the driveway, which is kind of weird. That's the only reason I put that on there, because it showed Nicole dropping her off, but nobody actually walking up to the house. It was kind of weird, but she was in the house.
Okay.
So-
And what time are we talking?
This is still 1:48.
Okay.
So, 2 a.m., Shanann gets into bed with me. 4 a.m., that's when my alarm goes off for work, and I'm just get dressed, brush my teeth, everything I do upstairs.
Okay.
4:15, that's when I get back, slide right into bed next to her, and start having a conversation with her about having the house up for sale, and talking about it, like actually proceeding with the separation.
Okay.
And obviously it gets pretty emotional, like we're talking about, like we felt the disconnection was there, like falling out of love, and trying to stay together, maybe just for the kids' sake, but we're realizing that doing like our homework, it's not, most of the time that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty emotional because we have 2 beautiful kids and we have 1 on the way. So it's just a matter of like, it was very emotional, we were both crying, and at the end, we just said, she said she was gonna take the kids to her friend's house for the day, she would be back. Okay. And I was like, okay, it's fine. And so I went downstairs, made my protein shake. It was 5 a.m., that's when I did that. Packed my lunchbox, had my oatmeal, chicken, filled my water jug up. 5:15, I went outside, backed my truck up, was loaded up. Had my book bag, my lunchbox, computer, water jug, my big clear container. I put big clear containers in my truck so it's easy just to pull out, pull in, just depending on what I'm gonna use. My O-ring kit, I knew I was gonna do some stuffing box rubbers that day, so I got some various open wrenches from my toolbox. I know those would work better than the ones they would give me.
Okay.
5:30, that's when I went to work.
Okay.
And I hadn't heard from Shanann for about 2 hours there, so at 7:40 I texted her and asked her if she could tell me where the kids were if she took them anywhere.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
At 12 I texted her again, call me. Nothing. And then about 12:10 p.m., that's when my doorbell visitor, it read another visitor, and I was like, it popped up on my phone, and it says it was Nicole. And I tried to put it on my phone to see if she's just trying to get in or whatnot. And I hear like she's on the phone trying to, I could hear her through my phone saying she's trying to get through to Shanann, so that's when I called her. I called her at 12:20, see what was going on. She told me that Shanann hadn't responded to any of her calls all day, or any of her friends' calls all day.
Okay.
And that's very strange, just because, I mean, she doesn't get back to me, that's fine, she gets busy with kids, whatever. So if she doesn't get back to her people, like the people like she works with direct sales.
Okay.
So if she doesn't get back with them, that's strange.
Is she the type to answer the phone?
For them, it's like all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it's just like, hey, wait, I'll see you later. So about 12:40, a few more efforts from Nicole to reach her while she's there, like outside the house.
Mm-hmm.
And at 1 o'clock, that's when I left, and I was like, all right, I'm on my way down there. 2 o'clock when I got home, because they couldn't get in because the front door had a top latch to keep the kids in. Nicole and the police officer that was there.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay, gotcha.
So they couldn't get in because top latch on the front door was hinged, and the keypad on the outside does not work to get in the garage. So they had to wait till I got there so I can get the remote opened.
Okay.
So that's when I got home. I opened the garage door and we went inside the house and looked everywhere. Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, nowhere to be found. Shannon's wedding ring's on her nightstand, her phone's still on the couch, her purse is still there, medicine for the kids is still there, the car seat is still there, and there's no sign of them anywhere.
Okay.
3 o'clock, the police officer, detective, Howard, right?
Oh, yes.
I butcher his name every time. Asking Nicole and I, questions about where she could have gone or who she could be with. At about 4 o'clock, the police officer that was there, he was checking neighbor security footage. At 5 p.m., the same police officer, detective, and then sergeant, another officer, they showed up and they searched the house again. About 6 o'clock, being calling around to anyone that may know something, called hospitals and hotels. 7:30, my friend Nick and Men showed up to show support and From then on, it's his friends showing up. So it's Lauren, Dave, Jeremy, and 10 o'clock's pretty much about laid down, but I did go to bed till about like 2 a.m. just because he was a text and calls all night.
Okay.